So as we know, Microsoft has filed their official appeal against the CMA's decision to block the Xbox Activision and Blizzard acquisition. And here we have the summary of the application to the Competition Appeal Tribunal, the CAT, or the CAT as we call it. And now we can see exactly what Microsoft is appealing, the grounds that they are appealing on. So let's read through it. So first of all, ground one, the respondent made fundamental errors in its assessment of the applicant's current position in cloud gaming services by failing to take account of constraints from native gaming, whereby gamers access games installed on their devices through a digital download or physical disc, undermining its substantial lessening of competition finding. And that is one of the huge things when it comes to the CMA's decision is they looked at the market share just in a completely wrong way. They were looking at it in the sense of Xbox Game Pass Ultimate, assuming that everybody on Game Pass Ultimate were playing cloud gaming, were using the cloud gaming services. It was the reason why they would have signed up for this service. And that's just not true. There's many people out there who have Xbox Game Pass Ultimate that don't use cloud gaming or barely use it. They may have dabbled in it here and there. Now, it continues here and says, in its market definition analysis, the respondent failed to consider potential switching to native gaming, resulting in a flawed conclusion that cloud gaming services fall in a separate product market, which you can go back and forth, of course, between cloud gaming and the native version of these games. I've done that before. I mean, I have a Steam Deck and sometimes I just use Xbox Cloud Gaming on that when I've been playing it previously on my console, download it, and I just kind of go back and forth. It's just whatever is more convenient. So that's 100% true. I'm sure lots of people do that as well. It says, even on the respondent's erroneous narrow market definition, the respondent failed to take into account relevant out-of-market constraints from native gaming in its competitive assessment of vertical foreclosure effects. And then C, the respondent made fundamental errors in its calculation and assessment of the market share data for cloud gaming services, and as a result, failed to take into account relevant considerations in its competitive assessment. And this section here, they're specifically, I believe, talking about the whole Game Pass Ultimate thing, where they made the market share that Xbox had in cloud gaming much bigger than it actually is. Ground number two, the respondent erred in failing to take proper account of 3 long-term commercial agreements which the applicant had entered into with cloud gaming providers for the licensing of rights to stream its game, including Activision's gaming content post-merger, the agreements in its assessment. And I'm guessing here they're talking about the agreements they made with NVIDIA GeForce Now, with Boosteroid, with Enware, with Ubisoft, with Nintendo, and the ability to give these games out with a worldwide royalty-free license. So anybody on those services, if they've gone ahead and purchased these games already, they're going to be able to use those streaming services, those cloud gaming services, to be able to play those games. And that was solidified as well in the EU's decision as one of the behavioral remedies, where they had to make sure that those licenses were given for free and anybody in those services could play and utilize the cloud gaming services, whatever service that they were on. And that's a huge thing, because those are deals that Microsoft was literally just handing out to anybody who wanted it, showing that they weren't trying to hold these games away from these other cloud gaming services. They were more than happy to provide out the licenses to anybody who would have wanted it. So that's something here. It's interesting that they didn't even take that into account. And I believe here, like they say, 3 of those long-term commercial agreements they just didn't look at. And I wonder exactly which 3 they're talking about here. Ground 3, the respondents finding that Activision would have been likely to make its gaming content available on cloud gaming services absent the merger was irrational and arrived at in a procedurally unfair manner. And I mean, I have to agree on this one. It definitely seems like an irrational decision, because why in any world, if Activision is right now selling Call of Duty, it's always the number one selling game, their games fly off the shelves, why in any world would they want to just change their entire business strategy and then start giving all these games out to these smaller cloud gaming services? It just doesn't really make any sense. I highly doubt that they would be doing that. Highly doubt that going forward, if this deal were to be completely blocked and Activision Blizzard was not a part of Xbox, that their games would ever end up on these smaller cloud gaming services like Boosteroid, like the Ubisofts and the Enware. And obviously, what Microsoft is doing is they are expanding out that reach and they are expanding out that access by giving these games out. Yes, obviously, Xbox, Microsoft, they gain a lot from this, because if you're somebody out there who uses Boosteroid, maybe you wouldn't have purchased Call of Duty previously. And now that you're seeing that the game is going to be available on that service, if this deal does close and it goes through, Microsoft owns the IP, maybe they go out and buy it then, and Microsoft gains off that because they're making the money off that person purchasing the game. So it's a win-win at the end of the day for both, because then Boosteroid also gets a customer that maybe wouldn't have considered using the service, but now that they know these Xbox games are on that service, it's more likely that they'll go ahead and sign up. So it's a win-win, and that's, I think, one of the main things here with this entire deal. Ground 4, the respondents' findings that the applicant would have the ability and incentive to foreclose rival cloud gaming services by withholding access to Activision's gaming content post-merger was unlawful. In particular, the respondents' analysis was affected by 4 errors, each of which in isolation, separately, and or cumulatively renders the findings on ability and incentive unlawful, irrational, and or disproportionate. And they continue here with 3 points under ground 4. A, the respondent wrongly relied on the evidence that so-called AAA games would be important for cloud gaming services to find that Activision games in particular would hold such importance. B, the respondent failed to take into account of relevant evidence regarding immediate losses from hypothetical foreclosure, which showed that applicant would not have an incentive to withhold access to Activision games from cloud gaming rivals. I think that's a huge one there, that they would be losing a ton of money right away if they were to try to foreclose these companies by withholding the game. And then C, as set out in ground 1 and 2, the respondent wrongly failed to take account of 1, relevant out-of-market constraints, and 2, the agreement. So that's a big one here. They're calling them out and saying that they made major errors here and that they were irrational, disproportionate, all that type of stuff. Now, ground 5, in assessing remedial action for the substantial lessening of competition, the respondent erred in law by proceeding on the basis that it had a duty to impose what it described as a comprehensive remedy, thus failing to consider a range of remedies and assess their benefits and detriments in the round. So they failed to look at those behavioral remedies that we saw were more than good enough for the European Union, the European Commission, to go ahead and approve the deal there. And I mean, the remedies Microsoft are making here are huge, like 10-year deals to offer all of these games to all these different platforms, making sure that Call of Duty, all that type of stuff is staying multi-platform, even though they would be owning the IP. That's huge in terms of making it less scary, I guess, for these markets, that a huge company like Microsoft will come in and just destroy everything, foreclose people, and make it completely anti-competitive and try to close down their major rival in PlayStation. One of the things their PlayStation was arguing, as we know, was that Call of Duty is so big for them. If they don't have that as their main pillar, their whole business crumbles. Even, I think they were saying something like PlayStation Plus wouldn't even be worth having if they aren't able to put the game in their service. And if it's available on Game Pass but not available on PlayStation Plus, all of this type of stuff, they were putting so much emphasis on how big Call of Duty was for the PlayStation platform. And obviously Microsoft knows that it's big for them, and they would never take the game off the platform because Microsoft will lose a ton of money as well if they do that. Now, B says unlawfully fail to take account of the interests of committee, and C, erred in rejecting the Microsoft Cloud remedy, which rejection was in all circumstances disproportionate, and D, acted in breach of the respondent's common law of duty of fairness in the CMA's own remedies guidance. And I guess they could argue here that rejecting the remedies, the cloud gaming remedies, is disproportionate. They could show like the European Commission accepted them. It was perfectly fine for them. How come it's not proportionate here for the CMA? And maybe the CMA will argue things like market share is the UK is a bigger market for Xbox than the EU. So maybe that's something as to why they would reject it, because even with these remedies, maybe they still believe it would still really hinder cloud gaming going forward. We'll see what happens here with the appeal. Now, finally, they make 3 points here that are pretty interesting. It says the applicant seeks the following relief from the tribunal. 1, an order pursuant to section 125A of the Act quashing the decision in its entirety. So just, the decision squashed and they would go ahead and approve the deal. 2, an order that the respondent pays the applicant cost of this application. They're saying that you're wasting Xbox's time and we want you to reimburse us for all of this work that we're having to do to go ahead and appeal it because your decision was irrational, disproportionate, all of that type of stuff. So they want their money back as well. $1 trillion company. 3, such further of or other relief as the tribunal deems fit. So they're just saying, reverse this decision, essentially, or quash the decision and pay us back our money for wasting our time, wasting everybody's time. So we'll see what happens there. Now, again, this has just been filed. I believe it starts May 30th as the time frame where the appeal process is going to go. And it could last, I believe I've read previously, up to like 9 months. So this could go all the way into 2024 before a final decision is made. But there you have it. These are the grounds that Xbox is appealing the CMA's decision to block the Xbox Activision Blizzard acquisition. Let me know your thoughts on this in the comments below. Let me know if you think they're going to win this appeal, or if you think at the end of the day, this deal is still going to be blocked and Microsoft is going to have to find another way forward, knowing that the CMA has ended their chances of trying to get this deal closed and approved in the UK. If you enjoyed this video, hit that thumbs up. If you're new, hit that subscribe, and I'll catch you guys in the next video. Bye.